Imagine a killer who didn't just hide in the dark, but played with the police, mocked the media, and left behind cryptic codes that took 50 years to crack. A killer who claimed 37 lives, but whose real name remains completely blank. He killed in the open. He wrote letters to the newspapers, taunting, specific, terrifying letters. He mailed pieces of his victims' clothing to prove he was real. He encrypted messages and dared the world to crack them. And then he vanished. No arrest, no trial, no name. This is the Zodiac Killer. And what you're about to hear is the documented record, the confirmed facts of the most haunting unsolved case in American history. Northern California, 1968. Life in the Bay Area felt expansive. New suburbs were spreading out from Vallejo, Napa, San Francisco. Young couples parked at remote lovers' lanes on quiet, dark country roads. It felt safe out there. It wasn't. Somewhere in that landscape, someone was watching. Someone who didn't want money, didn't seem to know his victims, didn't appear to have any conventional motive at all. Someone who, it would turn out, wanted something far stranger than any of that. He wanted an audience. December 20th, 1968. Lake Herman Road, Benicia, California. Two teenagers, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen, were parked in a remote area off the road. They were shot and killed. No witnesses, no suspect. The case went cold almost immediately. Then, 6 months of silence. July 4th, 1969. Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Darlene Ferrin, 22 years old, and Michael Mageau, 19, were attacked in a parking area late at night. Darlene was killed. Michael was shot multiple times, but Michael survived. And moments after the attack, someone called the Vallejo Police Department. A male voice, calm. He reported the shooting, and then casually mentioned the Lake Herman Road murders from 6 months earlier. Murders that most people had already forgotten about. That was when police first understood. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the same person, and he wanted them to know it. September 27th, 1969. Lake Berryessa, Napa County. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were students at Pacific Union College. They were picnicking by the lake when a man approached them, wearing a hood and a strange bib-like garment bearing a symbol, a crossed circle. He tied them up, and then he stabbed them, repeatedly. Cecilia Shepard died 2 days later from her wounds. Brian Hartnell survived. Before leaving the scene, the attacker did something investigators had never seen before. He picked up a felt-tip pen and wrote on the door of Hartnell's car. He listed the dates of his previous attacks, and then he wrote the date of this one. He was keeping score. October 11th, 1969, San Francisco. Taxi driver Paul Stein was shot and killed in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. A group of teenagers watching from a nearby window described the shooter, a heavy-set white male. Here's where things became deeply painful. San Francisco police officers responding to the scene received a radio dispatch with an initially incorrect description of the suspect, and reportedly encountered a man in the area matching the actual witness description. They let him walk. The Zodiac had just killed a man in one of the most densely populated cities in California, and he walked past responding officers into the night. These 4 attacks, Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Stein taxi murder, are the attacks confirmed by physical evidence, survivor testimony, and verified correspondence. The Zodiac later claimed additional victims. Those claims have not been independently confirmed by law enforcement evidence. August 1st, 1969, 1 month after the Blue Rock Springs attack, 3 letters arrived in the mailrooms of 3 Bay Area newspapers: the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contained the same thing: specific, non-public details about 2 murders, details that only investigators and the killer could have known. Each letter claimed responsibility for both attacks, and each letter came with a threat. "Publish this on the front page," the letter said, "or the killings would escalate." The newspapers published, but that wasn't the strangest part. Each letter also contained 1/3 of a 408-symbol cipher, a code. The killer claimed that if the 3 pieces were assembled and decoded, they would reveal his identity. Within days of the newspapers publishing the combined cipher, a schoolteacher from Salinas named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty cracked it. It didn't contain the killer's name. Instead, it contained a rambling, menacing statement about the thrill of killing and a disturbing claim about collecting slaves in the afterlife. The Zodiac had lied about what was inside his own code. But the letters didn't stop. Over the following years, more arrived, at newspapers, at police departments, even at a San Francisco attorney named Melvin Belli, who had publicly offered to help. Investigators confirmed approximately 21 communications as likely authentic. Then came October 13th, 1969. A letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside it, a swatch of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, physical proof the writer had been there. The letter also included a hand-drawn sketch, the writer's crude depiction of himself, and every letter was signed the same way. A crossed circle, his symbol. He called himself the Zodiac. That crossed circle, a circle cut through by crosshairs, became the most feared symbol in Northern California. He signed every letter with it. He wore it on his hood at Lake Berryessa. He treated it like a brand, and the fear that followed was real and documented. Parents kept their children home from school after the Zodiac sent letters threatening to attack school buses. Police departments across the Bay Area were flooded with tips, theories, false leads. The San Francisco Chronicle, his apparent preferred outlet, became the public face of a terror campaign unlike anything the region had seen. He wasn't hiding what he was doing. He was broadcasting it, and the media couldn't look away, which was, investigators would later note, exactly what he wanted. The Zodiac sent 4 coded messages in total. 3 came in that first August 1969 mailing, the 408-symbol cipher, split into thirds. That one was cracked within days. But then came the 4th, included in a letter dated November 8, 1969, addressed to the San Francisco Chronicle. 340 symbols, more complex, more deliberately constructed. It became known simply as the Z340, and it would resist every attempt to crack it for 51 years. Law enforcement agencies tried, professional cryptographers tried, amateur code breakers tried, computer scientists tried. Thousands of hours were poured into those 340 symbols. Nothing worked. 2 shorter ciphers, one 13 symbols long, one 32 symbols long, also arrived over the years. Both remain unsolved to this day. But the Z340, that was the obsession, because the Zodiac had built something that could outlast the entire investigation. Or so everyone thought. The following discusses individuals investigated by law enforcement. No one was ever charged with any Zodiac crime. Being named as a suspect is not the same as being guilty. All persons discussed here were either cleared by investigators or remained subjects of public speculation without any confirmed legal finding. Investigators worked this case for decades. Multiple agencies, the San Francisco Police Department, The Napa County Sheriff's Office, the Vallejo Police Department, and the California Department of Justice pursued dozens of leads and investigated numerous individuals. One name rose above all the others: Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen was a Vallejo resident, a convicted sex offender who became the subject of intense scrutiny by Detective Dave Tashi of the San Francisco Police Department and by investigators across multiple agencies. But here's what the evidence actually showed. Handwriting samples taken from Allen did not match the Zodiac's known handwriting. DNA testing conducted after Allen's death in 1992, using genetic material extracted from the saliva on the Zodiac's letters, did not produce a match. Arthur Leigh Allen was never charged with any Zodiac crime. Over the decades that followed, other suspects were advanced by researchers, journalists, and family members with personal theories. Books were written, documentaries were made, but as of today, not one of those theories has produced a charged suspect, a conviction, or a confirmed identification, accepted by any law enforcement agency with jurisdiction over the case. The file stayed open. The answer stayed hidden. At this point, you might be asking the obvious question: how? How was this person who sent letters, who called police stations, who physically handed evidence to the world, never identified? In 1969, DNA analysis as a law enforcement tool did not exist. Fingerprint databases were paper-based and slow to search. Geographic profiling, the science of mapping crime patterns to establish where a killer likely lived, hadn't been developed yet. And because the Zodiac's attacks crossed multiple county lines, the different investigating agencies didn't always communicate cleanly with each other. His victims appeared to be random. No confirmed connection between the killer and any of them has ever been established. His attacks were spread out geographically and separated by months at a time, making pattern recognition nearly impossible in real time. Witness descriptions from the Stein murder and from survivor Brian Hartnell gave investigators something to work with. A heavy-set or stocky white male, middle height, likely between 35 and 45. But that description applied to tens of thousands of men across Northern California. He appeared to use gloves. The envelopes he licked yielded a DNA profile decades later. But that profile has never been matched to any confirmed suspect. And then there was the sheer noise of the investigation itself. Every time the case resurfaced in the media, thousands of new tips flooded in. False confessions, amateur theories, dead ends stacked on dead ends. The Zodiac had built the perfect trap, not for his victims, but for the investigation, and it held. December 2020, 51 years after the Zodiac mailed that 340-symbol cipher to the San Francisco Chronicle. 3 people cracked it. Not FBI analysts, not professional cryptographers. 3 amateurs: David Oranchak, a software developer from Virginia; Jarl van Eyck, a Belgian computer programmer; Sam Blake, an Australian mathematician. They had been working the problem for years, and the key insight, the thing that finally broke the cipher open, was this. The symbols weren't meant to be read in the simple left-to-right, top-to-bottom order that analysts had always assumed. The Zodiac had built a transposition into the cipher's construction. Once Oranchak's team accounted for that, the text began to emerge. They submitted their solution to the FBI's cryptanalysis unit. In December 2020, the FBI confirmed the solution was viable, consistent with the cipher's structure. The world held its breath, and the decoded message did not contain the killer's name, no location, no confession, no slip that would crack the case open. It was taunting text, menacing, a reference to gas chambers and police. The same dark theater the Zodiac had been performing all along, just encrypted. The longest unsolved cipher in American true crime history was cracked, and the killer was still unknown. The two shorter ciphers, 13 symbols and 32 symbols, remain unbroken as of this recording in 2026. 57 years. That's how long this case has been open. Generations of investigators have worked it. Generations of true crime readers have obsessed over it. And still, nothing. There's something about this case that lodges itself in the American brain and doesn't leave. He didn't run. He reached out. He put pen to paper, addressed envelopes, walked to mailboxes, and mailed his crimes directly to the people trying to stop him. He called police stations. He threatened school buses. He drew his own face and sent it in. That's not a killer trying to disappear. That's a killer performing. And performances demand an ending. This one never got one. There's also the puzzle, the ciphers sitting there, locked for decades. The human mind fixates on puzzles with visible solutions just out of reach. The Zodiac knew that. He built something designed to outlast him. But underneath all of it, the codes and the letters and the symbol, there are 5 real people. David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stein. They were not characters in a mystery. They were people with lives and families and futures that were taken from them violently and without justice. That's the part that doesn't go away. The mystery is compelling. The injustice is the reason it matters. As of June 2026, the Zodiac case is officially open. The San Francisco Police Department maintains it as an active cold case. The DNA profile extracted from the killer's letters remains in evidence, unmatched. The 2 short ciphers remain unbroken. The identity of the Zodiac Killer has never been confirmed by any law enforcement agency. What we know for certain ends here. At least 5 people were murdered in Northern California between December 1968 and October 1969. Their killer wrote letters. He sent ciphers. He mailed a piece of his victim's bloody shirt to a newspaper. He called police stations. He signed everything with a crossed circle and a name he invented for himself. And then, somewhere in the early 1970s, the letters stopped. The attacks stopped. Whether he died, whether he was imprisoned for something unrelated, whether he simply stopped, no one knows. He played with police. He mocked the media. He encrypted his messages and watched a nation try to read them. He claimed 37 lives, though only 5 are confirmed. And his name, 57 years later, is still a blank. If you have information about the Zodiac case, anything at all, the San Francisco Police Department's tip line is still active. The case is still open, and 5 families are still waiting.